A single location holiday, instead of our usual dash from place to place, sounded attractive when we had a week to spare late in 2010. But where to go? Well, we had always said we would like to return to Costa Rica after a good, if rain-affected trip in June of 2005. One of the best birding lodges, Rancho Naturalista, is located in the Caribbean slope foothills south of San Jose. It offered airport pickup and a selection of day trips from the lodge. It sounded ideal. It was the end of the green or wet season, so there was a risk of rain, but how bad could it be? It would be Costa Rican rain after all. We arrived as dark was falling and checked into our pleasant room with its own balcony overlooking the garden and with its own hummingbird feeder. We were looking forwards to an early start tomorrow, looking at the lodge feeders. Sadly, it was raining as we awoke, but the fruit feeders had been replenished and we were able to watch the birds from the public veranda. A black-cheeked woodpecker was making short work of a halved citrus fruit. Also in the garden were collared aracari. This bill seemed too large for the delicate work of peeling a banana, but the bird was managing it. The lodge is partway up a slope overlooking a valley. A nice view when it was visible and not mired in low cloud. At least the rain had stopped, so we decided to walk one of the lodge's forest trails. The lodge had constructed a hummingbird feeding station partway up the trail to attract forest hummers that did not want to come into the lodge's close feeders. It worked, in that this was the only place we found green thorntail, a feisty little female bird. We never saw her closer to the lodge. Other forest birds included a yellow-bellied flycatcher. The forest trails could be very quiet, unless you lucked in on a feeding flock. This is typical of rainforest birding. A handsome Tamara satyr butterfly posed nicely for us. We had spent the morning wandering the trails, and the sun had appeared. Now it was time for lunch, served at the edge of the patio so that birding could continue. This keel-billed toucan was strikingly perched in an overhanging cecropia branch that was to be a favorite perch for a number of birds in the next few days. Our first rufous-tailed hummingbird for the trip was also well posed. These birds are amongst the most argumentative of a famously feisty group of birds and always a welcome sight. Our first Hoffman's woodpecker also showed nicely, foraging around a tree stump at the edge of the garden. Black-cheeked woodpeckers, this one was a male, were to be very common at the fruit feeders at all times of the day. It was joined by the striking male scarlet-rumped tanager. At the time we visited, this was known as Passerini's tanager, before being lumped in with Cherry's tanager a few years later. There were lots of hummingbirds in the garden too. Violet saberwings and white-necked jacobins visited the nectar feeders and perched in the shrubbery. Little parties of brown jays regularly dropped into the garden to investigate the fruit feeders. passiflora, or passion flower, were found in the grounds. Brown violet-ear hummers were quite common. Although maybe not as gaudy as some, they can be quite sparkly in the right light. Green-breasted mango were probably at the very edge of their normal range, being supposedly uncommon in the southern Caribbean and Central Valley region. They seem to be locally quite numerous here though. Bronze-tailed plumeletier are always easy to ID, once you get a view of the diagnostic pink feet. This species is considered uncommon in Costa Rica and found mainly in Caribbean lowlands and foothills. A female collared trogon was a nice find too. A very striking little bird was the crowned wood nymph, especially the males with their iridescent blue and green plumage. Even in the dull and damp weather we were experiencing, these birds shone. Another common garden bird was the gray-headed chachalaca. One thing that Rancho Naturalista is famous for are the hummingbird pools. A series of very small pools formed by a tinkling mountain stream. These are an established spot for hummingbirds to come to drink and bathe. They do this in the late afternoon, so we made sure to make our way there to see what we could see. A number of species came in to bathe by repeatedly ducking into the water. It was fascinating to watch, but photography was difficult in the fading light and in deep forest. A short sequence of a purple-crowned fairy was our best result. Another common garden bird was the Montezuma or apendula. We were to enjoy watching their antics over the next few days. Night was falling and the rain had started again. The next day we were taking advantage of one of the lodge's half-day trips out to Katy. This research center for agriculture and sustainable use of natural resources has large grounds that are great for birding. First though, we would spend the first hour or two with the garden feeders. Blue-grey tanagers were a welcome addition to the trip list. Clay-colored thrush is the national bird of Costa Rica, chosen for the honor because it is found throughout the country and its busy but unassuming character seems to embody the Tico spirit. It was fun to watch the way that this Montezuma or apendula deftly extracted some tasty flesh from this banana. Baltimore oriole is a home bird. We see them all summer in Canada, so it was nice to see a wintering male in Costa Rica. Scarlet-rumped tanager and Hoffman's woodpecker joined in. Below the tables, an orange-billed sparrow was very active, hoovering up any dropped seeds. Female scarlet-rumped tanager was also present. It was still a little damp, but a much better morning than yesterday. That was hopeful for our visit to Katy. Hummingbirds were active, including crowned wood nymphs. But there was a very special hummer that Rancho is famous for, and we were very keen to see, the Snowcap. We had been told that the place to look was a stand of purple porterweed to one side of the garden, and, sure enough, there was a splendid male bird. It was still fairly cool, so he wasn't too active, meaning that we were able to get good looks at a perched male. We had seen the female on the previous afternoon but had been unable to get a photo. Our first buff-throated saltator showed pretty well too. It was increasingly difficult to tear ourselves away from these feeders. A female scarlet-rumped tanager looked on. In the end, we prized ourselves away and got on board the lodge's transport for the visit to Katy. We were being guided by the lodge's bird guide, Juan Carlos, known as Cali, and he had permission to guide on the Katy site. An area of more open grassland, forest, and an ornamental pool awaited us. The star birds here were to be green ibis. Cali assured us that he saw them 9 out of every 10 times that he visited Katy. Unfortunately, this would turn out to be visit number 10. Still, there were compensations. Boat-billed herons roosting on a small island on the ornamental pond were an unexpected find. Maybe more expected were northern jacana, picking their way amongst the water lilies. The larger trees in the grounds are often roosting sites for green ibis. Not today though, instead we found crimson-fronted parakeet. A colourful polymnia tiger-wing butterfly also posed for us. So far the rain had held off, although the sky looked quite threatening. We headed back to the lodge for lunch, and we would spend the afternoon in the grounds. We might get another crack at those green ibis later in the trip. Because it was dry, if not sunny, we decided on another walk on the lodge trails. A red-washed satyr was a spot of colour amongst the green. We stopped at the forest hummer feeders to say hello to our green thorntail. She was very faithful to this set of feeders. The lodge trails were very nicely maintained, without being overly groomed. All we needed now was that feeding flock. Back at the lodge, the sun was peeping through and it encouraged a few species to get busy around the garden. First, the inevitable black-cheeked woodpeckers, although we never got bored at watching them. A damp-looking rufous-tailed hummingbird settled into the foliage at the side of the public veranda and proceeded to scold everyone and everything that came near. They are definitely belligerent little birds. The sun encouraged a few butterflies to get busy amongst the porterweed. What initially looked like one species turned out to be at least three: the broad-banded skipper, Teleus longtail, and two-barred flasher. A white-lined tanager, so named for the slight white marking seen at the shoulder, was new into the feeders this afternoon. A clay-colored thrush showed much better than the one on the previous day. Montezuma oripendulus made their unmistakable calls from the trees above. White-necked Jacobins and crowned wood nymphs posed nicely for photos. The sun really brought out the iridescence in the feathers. This female crowned wood nymph was chased off by a rufous-tailed hummer. We went back to look at the porterweed hedge to see if we could find any more snowcaps. They weren't there, but a stripe-headed hermit, busily feeding, was a very acceptable alternative. It was very difficult to keep in the viewfinder as it whizzed around though. So it was the end of our second day at Rancho Naturalista. Yes, we'd had some rain, but we'd also had dry patches and some excellent birding in a very relaxed atmosphere. Sometimes it's nice to let the birds come to you. We still had lots to go at too. For more information, see our travelogue, available from Amazon. Fancy some Australian birding? See our videos from our 2018 tour on our channel, and our 3-volume travelogue from Amazon. Coming next, a visit to Tapanti National Park and a second go at those green ibis. We hope you have enjoyed this video. If so, why not like and subscribe to our channel to make sure you see the next installment and all of our other bird and wildlife videos. Thanks for watching.